Hello everyone, today I'm going to be revealing my post-draft NFL power rankings. Starting off with dead last, 32nd in the league, I have the Denver Broncos. This may come as a shock to some people. I think the Broncos have the worst quarterback room in the NFL. They have a solid offensive line, mediocre wide receivers, and then a mediocre defense. 31st, another team that may come as a shock to a few, maybe not to others. 31st, I have the New York Giants. I just don't think the Giants are going to be a very good team. They lost so many key pieces of that team in free agency, and they really already weren't that good. They lost Saquon Barkley, they lost Xavier McKinney. Sure, they traded for Brian Burns in the offseason, so their defensive line will probably be really good, but that won't help if their offense is still bottom of the league. Yes, they have Malik Neighbors, but I don't think Daniel Jones is that great of a starting quarterback. The Giants' offense as a whole is still going to suck, and ultimately that's what's important in today's NFL. Sorry, Giants fans, I have you guys at 31st. Moving on to 30th, I have last year's worst team in the NFL. This team was the Carolina Panthers. Look, I honestly, now that some time has passed, I think the Dave Canales hire might actually turn out to be a good one. You saw what he did in Tampa with Baker Mayfield as his quarterback. I think he can do the same thing to Bryce Young, especially now that Bryce Young has plenty of more weapons at his disposal. They traded for Deontay Johnson in the offseason. I think this is a great trade. Receiving core already looks a million times better. Not to mention drafting Jonathan Brooks, running back from the University of Texas. Defense overall isn't that bad. 29th, I have the Washington Commanders, another team that was abysmal last year in pretty much every category. They now have former LSU quarterback and Heisman Trophy winner in Jaden Daniels. They have done a ton of work in the offseason to improve that offensive line, so we'll see what Dan Quinn is cooking up. I think they made a lot of improvements as well on defense, so I think a lot of this is going to come down to coaching and how well this team is at developing Jaden Daniels and meshing all the other players together. 28th, another bad team from last season. This one, though, I think has plenty of potential to be a very good team in 2024. This team is the New England Patriots. Patriots hired Alex Van Pelt as their offensive coordinator, former offensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns, who also coached Jacoby Brissett, now the starting quarterback of the New England Patriots. I think this is going to be perfect. I think Jacoby Brissett has a lot of potential to be a great starting quarterback for the New England Patriots. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him start the whole season, but I also think it's great to have him there to kind of teach Drake May the system. The wide receiver room isn't that impressive. The defense, I think, will be outstanding. It wasn't that bad last season. Now they're getting Christian Gonzalez back. All right, moving on to 27th. I hate putting this team this low because honestly, I think they have improved significantly in the offseason. This team is the Tennessee Titans. They brought in Lloyd Cushenberry, center from the Denver Broncos, to bolster that offensive line. I know they probably wanted Joe Alt in the NFL draft. They ended up with J.C. Latham. Will Levis showed sparks last season of being their franchise quarterback. Now they have yet Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins on that team. Those are two outstanding wide receivers. They have brought in Tony Pollard, who isn't a bad running back. And they also traded for L'Jarius Sneed. 26th, I have the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray is still a good quarterback. They're finally going to get him for a full season, which makes a huge difference. This is one of the most underrated offenses in the league. The offensive line isn't great, I'll admit it, but the receiving core now with Marvin Harrison Jr. on that team, Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, this team is going to be, or at least their offense, somewhat formidable. And don't forget James Conner. So there are plenty of pieces that can work on this Cardinals offense. Defensively, there's still plenty of things to work on. All right, moving on to 24th, we have the Los Angeles Chargers. They have a franchise quarterback who is really good in Justin Herbert, and now they have one of the most winningest head coaches in NFL history, or at least in the NFL right now, in Jim Harbaugh. But sure, you look at their wide receivers, you look at their tight end, you look at their running back room, none of that is flashy or impressive, but I'm kind of trusting Jim Harbaugh to really develop Quentin Johnson and Ladd McConkey into star players. Maybe not star players, but they'll be solid players. They still got Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack on this team. Okay, moving on to 24th, I have the Las Vegas Raiders. I got to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of Aiden O'Connell at quarterback, but I do like that they have Gardner Minshew sitting on the bench right there. They still have a great receiving core in Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers. The running backs aren't the greatest, I'll be honest, but they have good pieces otherwhere on this team. Plus, The defense surprised me last year. I thought they were going to be the worst defense in the league. They turned out to be top 10, and this has to be because of their new head coach. Antonio Pierce seems to be the answer for the Las Vegas Raiders. So who knows what to expect from the Raiders this season. I just don't like this team that much because of their quarterback situation. Moving on to 23rd, it's kind of criminal to put this team this low, but it does make sense on paper. I have the Minnesota Vikings. Their starting quarterbacks are Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy, neither of which I'm too impressed with at the moment, but they do have Aaron Jones in the backfield, which should be a massive improvement from who they had last season. Now, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison are still great wide receivers, especially Jettas. We all know this. They have a solid offensive line, solid tight end at TJ Hawkinson, and they still got Brian Flores coaching their defense, which is a really solid guy to have do that. Again, it's kind of like the Raiders, where I think they're slightly better than the Raiders, but they have a great head coach, Kevin O'Connell, probably one of the best coaches in the NFL right now, but just no quarterback, and that makes me nervous. Okay, 22nd, I have the Indianapolis Colts. I'm a little hesitant on the Indianapolis Colts. Anthony Richardson's coming back, hopefully for his full season. We shall see. I'm a little shaky of pieces of their defense and the receiving core. I don't think they necessarily have the most elite weapons in the NFL. And Anthony Richardson, I still have not seen enough from this guy to confidently say he's going to be a good quarterback. Moving on to 21st, a team that honestly I think a lot of people underrate. 21st, I have the Seattle Seahawks. Look, they lost Pete Carroll, all-time great head coach, especially for the Seahawks, giving them that Super Bowl win. Now they have Mike McDonald, former Ravens offensive coordinator, which I think is a good hire for a head coach. But at the same time, they got Geno Smith as their starting quarterback. He's starting to get old. I'm also not trusting the Seattle Seahawks offensive line or defensive line. I like their secondaries. I like their wide receiver core, obviously, and I like their running backs. But a lot of key pieces, I think, on the offensive line and defensive line are still missing for this team to be an elite playoff contender. Moving on to 20th, I have the New Orleans Saints, a team that is always very confusing because you look at their roster, it looks pretty decent, but I do not trust Dennis Allen as a head coach. I don't think he's a very good head coach. Last season, he proved me wrong, I will say. They got 9 wins. I'm not confident in the Saints' ability. I think Derek Carr is also headed downwards. 19th, I have a playoff team from last season, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Losing Dave Canales might be the kryptonite for them, mainly because I don't trust Todd Bowles also as a head coach. I do trust Baker Mayfield, however, but I think things can get ugly if his play starts to deteriorate. They still got Mike Evans, Anton Winfield Jr., they got Chris Godwin. Not a lot of stars on the running offense, and the offensive line they got Vita Vea, but other than that, it's kind of shaky. And the defensive line and secondary are also kind of shaky. So there's plenty of holes on this Bucs team, but considering what they did last season, it's hard for me to put them any lower than this. 18th, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin's still their head coach, so they're still securing at least 9 wins or 8 wins and a tie. Plenty of pieces on this defense as well. TJ Watt. It's just this whole team is kind of mediocre. You know, this is the definition. You look up mid-team in the dictionary, a picture, the Steelers logo will pop up. They'll win 9 games, but they won't do anything in the playoffs. Moving on to 17th, another insanely improved team, in my opinion, in the NFL, the Atlanta Falcons. I love Kirk Cousins. I think he is a top 10 quarterback in this day and age in the NFL. I think he's going to do great things for the Atlanta Falcons, especially considering how good that Falcons offensive line is. The Falcons receiving core isn't that scary, but yeah, we haven't seen a full force Kyle Pitts or Drake London. They have Bijan Robinson as their running back, who I think should take a step forward with a new offensive coordinator, new system. I love Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates was a star for the Falcons last season as a safety. The rest of their defense, though, is a little shaky. Moving on to the top half of the league, headed into the 2024 NFL season. At 16th, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, we all know the Jaguars started 8-3 last season, and then they ended the season 9-8, missing the playoffs. Not a good look at all, but I'm going to be honest, this is what I think happened. I think Trevor Lawrence was hurt, and he just continued to play hurt because he had never missed a start in his college and NFL career. I don't even think his high school career up to that point, and he didn't know what to do, and he thought he had to play, which obviously he shouldn't have done. Now that Trevor Lawrence is healthy, the Jaguars should return back to that 8-3 form. Now, when they were 8-3, I don't think they were a top 5 team in the NFL. I think there's plenty of good pieces on this team, but I think Trevor Lawrence can be very good, but the rest of the team, I think it's a little bit mediocre. Mediocre wide receiver core, offensive line, and just defense as a whole. Except defensive line, they have Josh Allen, who's a great player, and I do like Travis Etienne as their running back. So they have pieces there to make it work. Trevor Lawrence just has to stay healthy, and Doug Peterson's got to work some magic. Moving on to 15th, we have the Cleveland Browns. They now have the hardest schedule in the NFL, so they'll probably lose a little bit more games than what we're used to seeing. But hey, Kevin Stefanski is one hell of a head coach, so we'll see what happens. We'll see what he does with that. I'm not fully sold on Deshaun Watson as a starting quarterback in Cleveland. They're getting Nick Chubb back. They have Jerome Ford, who was a star last season. They have a great wide receiver core, Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy should be, and yet they still have a very good defense all around. 14th, I have, this might be a shocker to some people, probably not, the Chicago Bears. I was tempted to put this team higher, but I think the Chicago Bears are going to be very good. Apparently, Caleb Williams is supposed to be Patrick Mahomes-esque. That is a big expectation to have on his shoulders as a rookie with no veteran player there for him to learn from. Plus, the Bears, they're not good at developing quarterbacks, so I'm a little hesitant. But if you look at the pieces around Caleb Williams, there are plenty of really good ones. DeAndre Swift, they got a decent running back room. They have an amazing wide receiver room, probably one of the best, maybe if not the best in the NFL, with DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and now Keenan Allen. They have a decent, above average offensive line, and then they also have a great defense. So the Bears team is going to be formidable. It's just hard to rank them high because they're the Bears. We all have an expectation when we hear the Bears. 13th, I have the New York Football Jets. Aaron Rodgers hopefully is playing this season, and that's basically going to determine how the season goes. If he's gone, they have Jordan Travis as a backup quarterback, who's also injury prone, as we saw last college football season. The defense is going to be really good, going to be a top 5 defense in the NFL. And their key issue last year was that they were losing offensive line starters left and right, offensive starters in general left and right. But now they have some depth on the offensive line position. They traded for Morgan Moses. They drafted Olu Fashanu, and they signed Tyron Smith in free agency. They have a bolstered offensive line with plenty of depth. That should be good to protect Aaron Rodgers. I'm a little concerned because a lot of those guys are kind of old. 12th, this team is probably grossly underrated, believe it or not. But 12th, I have the Buffalo Bills. They basically released or traded away their whole team. But again, they still have Josh Allen on this team. Josh Allen, top 3 quarterback in the NFL. He's going to still get the Bills team to a winning record. Even if he has to carry them on his back, he will do it. James Cook isn't a bad running back in the slightest. So if they can get the offensive line in the running game going, they'll be absolutely fine. There's no real stars on this Bills receiving room, but there's plenty of depth, especially same thing on the defense. Nothing too crazy. Von Miller has not been playing as the way we expected him, but still a very above average defense that can get the job done. So right now I keep them at 12th. 11th, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, another team that depends heavily on injuries, especially to their quarterback, Joe Burrow. They have a bolstered offensive line compared to what they've had in seasons prior. Again, it's also going to probably depend on if T. Higgins plays or not. I'm still not a big fan of their defense. Their defensive line's really good, and I like the signing of Geno Stone in the offseason, but there's still plenty of holes on that secondary that I really don't like for the Bengals. So I have to wait and see how good this team performs, how well Joe Burrow performs, and how healthy he is. Now we are headed into the top 10 teams headed into the 2024 NFL season. At number 10, I have the Miami Dolphins. Look, this team is very complete on both sides of the ball. Defense always seems to be a little shaky, and they lost plenty of starters in the offseason, but the wide receiver room on this team probably is the best in the NFL, and the running back room. Tua Tagovailoa is not a bad quarterback. Is he the greatest quarterback ever? No. I have high expectations for this Dolphins team. Of course, they fell short last year to Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. They might do it again, but this team does have potential to be very good. 9th, the Dallas Cowboys. They signed Ezekiel Elliott, which whatever. They're not going to be the best running team in the league, but they're going to take a step back from what they were last season. Defense is still going to be very good, especially if they get Trevon Diggs back for the full season. Him and Deron Bland as the team's starting cornerbacks, it's going to be dangerous. And they still have Micah Parsons. I think the Cowboys will end up being just fine. Still have CeeDee Lamb, one of the best wide receivers in the league. And believe it or not, Dak Prescott, he is unfortunately one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC. Moving on to 8th, I have a team, ironically, that I am kind of excited to see how good they are. I don't like this team. This team is the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love looked to be a generational talent towards the end of last season. I think he is going to be a good player. I hate to say it that the Packers did it again, but I think he's going to be a really, really good football player, really good quarterback, somebody that we're going to be talking about for a long time. Now, the rest of this Packers team, I'm not that confident in. I like the Josh Jacobs signing. I wish they kept Aaron Jones, though. That would have been a formidable offense. Running back room, they got plenty of young wide receivers who are all kind of around the same level. None of them are that bad, but none of them are elite. But hey, that didn't stop them in the past. The offensive line is a little shakier than it has been in years, but we'll see what happens. And I love the Xavier McKinney hire. The safety was a top need of the Green Bay Packers. They got one of the best safeties in the league. 7th, the Houston Texans. Another team I am very excited for. C.J. Stroud, great rookie season. They always talk about that second-year slump. Who knows if it happens and who fucking cares? Because this team has only gotten better, signing plenty of stars in the offseason and trading for Stephon Diggs. The wide receiver room with Tank Dell and Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs and Dalton Schultz at tight end. It's going to be very good. The offensive line might be a little bit shaky, but we'll see what happens. They didn't really stop the team last year. And I think the defense is heavily improved as well. I think they do have Jeff Okudah as a starting cornerback, which is a little bit of a sign of concern, but other than that, Houston Texans are going to be a very good team. And who knows, we might see it for the first time. The Houston Texans might make a conference championship. Who knows? Moving on to 6th, I have a team that a lot of people probably won't like me having at 6, but I firmly believe that they are the Los Angeles Rams. They have an outstanding running back room with Blake Corum and Kyron Williams. They have an insane wide receiver room with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. And I think Matthew Stafford, maybe I'm biased, who fucking knows, but I think Matthew Stafford can still sling the ball and is still a very good quarterback. They added Jonah Jackson, former Detroit Lion at guard, who is a very good player. He kind of held our offensive line together there for a little bit mid-season. And they also drafted Braden Fisk and Jared Verse for the defensive line. This team is going to be good. It's going to be good. Nope, we should stop sleeping on the Rams. Top 5 teams in the NFL headed into 2024 season. Number 5, I got my Detroit Lions. Look, there was really one major flaw on this Detroit Lions team last year, and is that our secondary was booty meat ass, and they tackled that need heavily in the draft by drafting Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakenstraw, and they also signed Amik Robinson and traded for Carlton Davis. So we have plenty of guys that can get the job done on this team. We signed Marcus Davenport and DJ Reader to the defensive line. So the defensive line should be better. The defense as a whole should be better. Aiden Hutchinson doesn't really have to carry the whole defensive line by himself anymore. And the offense, I can't tell you a single hole. Maybe wide receiver, because Amon-Ra might get double covered and then we might have some problems. We still got Jameson Williams, one of the fastest players in the league. One of the best running back duos in the league in David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And Jared Goff just got paid. This team's going to be good. Moving on to 4th, I have the Baltimore Ravens, the team that really should have won it all last year, but they fucked it up in the AFC Championship game. They have lost plenty of pieces since then with their linebackers and offensive line, which raises some level of concern, but nonetheless, Kyle Hamilton is still playing insanely well. Their defense is going to be very good, and Lamar Jackson is still an MVP caliber player. I think he'll continue to play that way as long as he stays healthy. Their rushing attack was already good with Lamar Jackson. Now they also have Derrick Henry as their starting running back. The run game should be even better than it was last season. Moving on to 3rd, this might be a little controversial, but at 3rd, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. This is one of the most complete teams in the NFL. I know Jalen Hurts didn't play the greatest last season, but they got some coordinator change. They got Kellen Moore at offensive coordinator. I think that's a good hire. They are slowly piecing together this team again, and I think they're going to be back to the level they were 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl. I love what they did in the draft. They had one major hole. Their secondary was awful last year, and now they drafted Quinyon Mitchell, arguably the best cornerback in the draft class. They had a couple holes on that team, not many. They filled them, and they should be locked in and ready to go. They also signed Saquon Barkley from their rivals, the New York Giants. Saquon Barkley, I think, is definitely a top 5 running back in the NFL, and now the Philadelphia Eagles have him behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Eagles are going to be scary, man. They're going to be scary. They're a team that has been there and done that before, and I think they'll do it again. Moving on to second, no surprises here. We all know who the top 2 are. Second, I have the best team in the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers. There's no other way to say it, but they are the most complete team in the NFL. Solid quarterback, great head coach, great wide receivers, okay offensive line, great all-around defense. This team is elite. They have the potential to win the Super Bowl. Would not be shocked to see them in that position again. And number 1 shouldn't come as a shock to anybody. Number 1 is the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to be number 1 until proven otherwise, because I always try to put a new team at number 1, and the Chiefs that just end up winning the Super Bowl again. So at this point, until someone beats the Chiefs are number 1. Doesn't matter how many holes are on that team. As long as Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and Travis Kelce are all on that team together, they are going to be winning championships. And that was my power rankings headed into the 2024 NFL season. If you liked the video, please like the video, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Oh, also, if you hated this video, please let me know down in the comments below. If you think I'm a stupid, dumb idiot, which I probably am, let me know, man. I want to hear it. I want to hear it. Let me have it. Let me have it. I want to hear your opinions. What would you change? Anyways, I'll see you all in the next one. Take care. Goodbye. Have a good day.